So years ago, I went through a die-hard Martha Stewart phase. Her magazines and television show were to me like Pinterest is today, except you didn't get to see the fails like you do with Pinterest. And so there was one holiday season that she made this cranberry wreath, and I thought this would be a great gift for my mom. Hours and hours later, and bloody fingertips from breaking off all of these toothpicks and putting the cranberries on, the wreath was finally finished. And then there was an Easter that I wanted to make this amazing cake that I saw that she did. And the whole top of this cake was this really cute little garden scene with marzipan animals and a vegetable garden that was crushed up Oreos and all these marzipan veggies. And it was 2-layer cake. And I think I was probably up until sunrise, and once again, probably in tears trying to finish this cake. And finally, it was around one Thanksgiving that I had this grand idea that I was going to recreate one of the big dinners that she did. When someone finally said, "You know, she has an entire team that does this, and she doesn't actually do any of it herself." And I think it was one of those moments like where the clouds parted and the seas calmed, and I was like, okay, I don't have to master this. And then this last week, I read an article that pretty much did the same thing for me. And I think I've been waiting to hear something like this for a really long time. It was titled, "Why Scruffy Hospitality Creates Space for Friendship." It was written by Jack King, who's an Anglican priest in Knoxville. And he starts off with these thoughts, that after 7 years of marriage, my wife and I have welcomed numerous friends into our home. Once we decide to host friends for an evening, we usually kick into a get-ready mode, a fast and furious sprint in the days and hours before our friends arrive. We divide and conquer the to-do lists, select a menu, do the grocery shopping, mow the lawn, sweep the floors, vacuum dust, wipe the bird dew off the lawn chairs, set the table, clean the playroom, clean it again a second and third time, and somehow, some way, pray that all this happens before the doorbell rings. So then he goes on to say that over the years, that to-do list has actually prevented them from hosting company and from welcoming friends into their home. Those unwritten rules of offering hospitality with excellence have affected how often they invited people into their homes. We should have so-and-so over sometime, and then delay and postpone, because that to-do list is always there. That gap between our day-to-day home and the presentable, what is acceptable for the hospitality that we think should be in our home. So the article went on to say that laying those conversations aside allows us to create space to have authentic relationships, preparing space to be authentic and allow others to also be themselves. And sometimes that level of authenticity happens when everything is just a bit scruffy. And I think that that is part of the message that we hear in our story with Mary and Martha. We can spend so much time worrying and trying to perfect things, trying to get it right, that we miss out on what is actually happening around us. In our reading, Martha has been busy trying to be the perfect hostess, which also then leads her to have resentments towards her sister. Mary is in there sitting with her guests and listening intently. But the problem we run into with Martha isn't that she's just busy with the hospitality, but she's worried and she's distracted. Her worry and distraction leave no room for one of the most important parts of hospitality, that gracious attention to the guest. Her worry and distraction prevent her from being truly present with who is in the room. And it causes her to drive a wedge between her sister and herself, and also between Jesus and herself. She missed out on that one thing that was needed, being able to listen and engage with her guest. So maybe the words that we hear from Jesus Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, and there is need of only one thing, are less of a rebuke and more of an invitation to practice that scruffy hospitality that will actually allow her to become a part of the conversation, that allows her to be reminded that her value isn't for what she does or how well she does it, but her value is for who she is, and that is a child of God. In a culture of hectic schedules and that relentless pursuit of productivity, we are all tempted to measure our worth by how busy we are, by how much we accomplish, or by how well we meet the expectations of others. And yet, in the midst of that, we can be left with an emptiness and a longing. We can be left with what many of us call that God-shaped hole. We can feel pulled in different directions, feeling worried and distracted by countless things. And yet, as we're reminded in Luke 12:25, can any of you by worrying add a single hour to your lifespan? We know that worrying doesn't do us any good, and that much of what we worry about is not as important in the larger scheme of things. And yet we cannot seem to quell those anxious thoughts or that anxious energy that we hold. I'm sure that for many of us, our busyness and our distractions can come from the noblest of intentions. We want to provide for our families. We want to give our children every opportunity to enrich their lives. We want to serve our neighbors, and we want to build that relationship with the God of our understanding. And yet, if all of our activities leave us with not having the time to be still, no time to sit in the presence of our higher power, we are likely to end up anxious and troubled because we'll be trying to figure things out on our own. We are likely to end up doing service work that is devoid of love and joy and ends up being more resentful of others. That kind of feels like an obligation versus that authentic part of ourselves. So then we come back to this idea of scruffy hospitality. You don't have to wait until you are more put together to work on your relationship with God. You don't have to work until you have this program figured out to get involved. And you don't have to be anything other than who and what you are exactly today at this moment to know that you are loved and valued by God. That idea of scruffy hospitality means you're not waiting for everything in your house to be in order before you host or serve friends in your home. But I think it also means that you're not waiting for everything in your house to be in order before you welcome God and you welcome people in this fellowship into your life. Scruffy hospitality means you hunger more for good conversation and a simple meal of what you have and not what you don't have. It means that you're more interested in quality conversation than the impression your home or your lawn makes. If we only share ourselves when we're excellent, we aren't truly sharing our lives together. So don't allow the to-do list to disqualify you from connecting with friends and from connecting with people in this fellowship. It is hard enough sometimes to find that time. Scheduling our lives can be difficult. This weekend, I got to spend time with a good friend of mine, and we have spent the last 3 months trying to pick a weekend to have a girls' weekend together. We would give dates back and forth, then get distracted and forget to check in with each other. And then once again, we didn't settle on a date. And finally, we just said, we need to make this happen or another summer is going to go by and we're not going to get it done. Those friendships, those relationships in our lives are more important than if a stack of mail has been sorted or if it's still sitting on the table, if the refrigerator is full of the finest foods. And as she left this morning, we were both grateful for our time together, for the connection and the conversation, even if there was still mail on the table and a few dust bunnies blew across the floor over the course of the weekend. So Jack King poses this question to us. What does it look like to welcome people into my humility rather than my standard of excellence? And I love that line. What does it look like to invite people into my humility instead of my standard of excellence? The playroom may not be tidy. Dinner may be picked up from Kroger or ordered from pizza. But we begin to value community and let go of the pride that lurks across the threshold of our welcome mat. Figuring out what is ultimately important to us and putting that first is key. And when we are talking about addiction, nothing is more important than whatever it takes to stay sober. And for those of us who need faith to be a part of that journey and be a part of recovery, nothing is more important than understanding God's will for our lives and being able to deepen that relationship with God in order to stay sober. So sometimes the faithful thing to do is to drop everything and to sit still and listen like Mary. And other times we will find that the faithful thing to do is to get busy and to commit to some important task like Martha. The truth is that both of these attributes have their time and their place, and the burden lies in discerning when to do one and when to do the other. So I invite you to be watchful for the ways that God's presence is breaking around you. Stay alert to how it may be drawing near to you. You may find that it comes in the form of some person needing some help this week. You may find that it's going to be that newcomer that walks in and can't figure out where to be in the next place, and the schedule doesn't make any sense, and you can help them get where they need to be. Or maybe it'll be something that stirs your energy and your passion and it puts you into action. Or some spiritual awakening that reminds you that you are alive. Or maybe it's even that just those feelings that are coming back. Or if something of beauty that reminds you that the world truly is full of beauty and wonder. Who knows what form it will take? But I invite you to look for it in the midst of the routines of our daily lives and pray for the ability to discern it when it draws near. Then, having discerned its presence, rest easy and embrace it. You will know what to do next, because all we need to do is the next right thing. All we need to do, again, then, is the next right thing. Amen.